What's the time for your speech? How
The
long?
time is 5 to 7 minutes.
5 to 7 minutes. TJ? All right. TJ has some audio, so if we have technical difficulties, please stand by.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
I have to introduce it. Good evening, Toastmasters. I was completing a project in Pathways of innovative planning. It was level 3, and I was supposed to record a podcast, to which I did, kind of. And I had some technical difficulties of my own. I was recording a podcast on a problem many Americans face in this country, being in a toxic work environment, a work environment that's not fulfilling, or just very, or the environment is very, very negative. But the problem is, because although the inoculation for the flu vaccine was available, I didn't follow up and I didn't get my own flu vaccine, and the environment in my own house was so toxic, I couldn't complete the podcast. I came down with the cold, luckily not the flu, even though I didn't get the shot. Don't worry, I'm all better. Not contagious now. But that messed up my podcast real bad. Because in the podcast, you can't hear any of my material, even though my dad and I are talking in the podcast. All you hear is me sniffling all the time. So instead, I'd like for you guys to try and count how many times I sniffled in the podcast. And please, if you're ever recording yourself on camera, or you're recording a podcast, do yourself a huge favor. If you have a cold, please blow your nose before recording, so that it doesn't end up sounding like this.
Yeah, they think that if they teach you what they know, you will be doing more than their job. Okay, that's the reason they don't want to show you how. But that's a negative thinking, and I don't believe in that. If you teach to someone, you don't lose anything. In fact, you learn more. I have a personal experience. Right. I used to teach calculus when I was in college. So I know calculus. Right. I know now because of that fact that I. And in the second scenario, when people blame you for their mistakes, and I guess what they're trying to do at that point is that you are working on a project together, and you have to just do everything all over again, and whatever the time you spend on it, a week or 2 or a month, if you have to redo it, somebody in the management will ask, raise this question, that why are we working on this all over again? This was supposed to be done 2 weeks ago, and now we are working on it again. This will delay the project. Definitely. So instead of a person taking the responsibility on his shoulder, everything has changed now, we are redoing everything. It's decided to put blame on your shoulder. That first time what they gave you every time worked correctly.
So, I guess that's, that actually sounds about right. Today, people think that if they teach, in the workforce particularly, but even in other places I've seen, like, and even in other places, in this podcast, for the sake of the topic, we declared working in a non-for-profit charity or volunteering for an organization of any kind. We also consider those a work environment too. I have seen that there's a lack of, I guess you could say humility in the sense that people are not humble anymore and no longer willing to say the word I don't know. And particularly in the workforce, people are scared to say I don't know because the phrase I don't know might mean that, okay, well, if you don't know and person B knows, then why are you doing the job? Why isn't person B doing your job? And more often than not, that form of thinking is not true. In fact, I remember when I was an IT intern. I think you remember this, Dan. When I was an IT intern, that was literally my first job. And I remember before then I applied for multiple positions, like being like in the retail, because I had no previous work experience. But fortunately, I landed into a gold mine where the mayor of my local city offered me a job. I remember the phrase when I said the words, I don't know, I learned more and I gained more than when I knew the answer. Because when I said I don't know, then I learned the answer. I think what people need to understand, and I think the audience, I hope you get this message here, the phrase I don't know is very powerful. Because what happens is with I don't know, then you have to learn. And when you learn, you gain an experience, right? You gain knowledge, right? And that's an advantage you have, and nobody can take that away from you. Maybe the circumstances around you may change. Maybe you may have to change jobs, or maybe some unforeseen circumstance may happen that's out of your control, but that doesn't take the experience away. That's a skill. When you learn a new skill, you keep that skill for life. Other people don't keep that skill. You keep that.
If you guys kept count, I sniffled about 14 times total during the podcast. Yeah, get your flu shot so that your podcast doesn't feel like mine, and blow your nose before you're on camera.